Welcome back, folks, CIOs and bow ties. This is our part 3 of a fascinating discussion with Dante Venafro, my ascribed blockchain AI tech guru, multidisciplinary man, looks at things from the media, public policy, and technology perspective. In our previous segment, we were talking about the ways technology has been used, some use cases to fight the COVID-19. So you were mentioning medical imaging, Dante. Perhaps you can tell us about some other examples that you've seen around technology and the fight against COVID-19.
Yeah, before the break, you had mentioned like at-home sample collections. Why can't I go to a doctor and get a CT
Thank you, yeah.
Right? And I know that you obviously know, right, there's a certain capacity of the system versus there's hundreds of millions of people who are curious, oh, I want to test myself, oh, I had a cough the other day, does that mean I have COVID? And what I think is interesting is there was actually 3 at-home, really popular at-home test kits. One was called Everlywell, the other was Carbon Health, and the third was NERCS. And these were getting retweeted by some of the leaders of blockchain, like the CTO of Coinbase, Balaji, was retweeting these. This is like things were coming out of Y Combinator to give people an at-home test kit. And as of yesterday, the FDA updated its emergency use authorization and literally banned them from doing the at-home collection.
Huh.
So this was only 24 hours ago.
What was their reason for that? For banning it?
I have my own theories, but we should stay out of my theories.
Yeah.
If you were to type in FDA emergency authorization, like banning at-home COVID kits, you'll see the articles pop up. And what I think is interesting is about that is the at-home kits can definitely reduce the risk greatly because you're not walking into a hospital. What if you walk into a hospital, you didn't have it, and then you get it because you're surrounded by infected people, or vice versa? You walk in and you are infected, and there may be people in the hospital who aren't, and it's just a big risk, to be doing that at-home test kits can solve. But then the arguments that I heard against them are, you don't know if it's administered properly if you do it at home. Like the test that Pence said he took,
or something like that.
Yeah, Mike Pence was saying the test he took had to go all the way up his nose and then hook to the right. And you probably, and the doctor probably knew, ooh, let me get a thick mucus, sample versus at home. Someone might use it like a Q-tip in their ear, and then.
Yeah.
And so how can you trust? And there already has been a lack of accuracy in well-done tests where someone might test negative, and then positive the third time. And so even well-done tests seem to not have perfect accuracy. I think it has to do with, control. Like they want to have a controlled, standardized way of testing people, and I think we'll see how that strategy plays out in the long term.
Let's move away a little bit from that side of things. Some other effects that I maintain the system beneath the surface is perhaps weaker than we think it is, certainly the financial system, given the level of debt that's out there. So a few things that I've noticed. First of all, there's there's always a chronic shortage of dollars. A lot of sovereigns, external sovereigns outside of the U.S. borrow in U.S. dollars. And when it comes time to service their debts, there's always a mad scramble for dollars. So I've noticed that is a recurrence. I've also noticed other effects like there's a statistic I read that 75% of Americans literally live paycheck to paycheck. And so now we're seeing that, being unmasked in a pretty gruesome, terrible way. And I hope that gets resolved pretty quickly. And then lastly, obviously something like this curtails our personal civil liberties and probably rightly so, where the government can say, hey, stay in place, stay at home. So just love to hear your comments around the fragility of the financial system, civil liberties, any other examples of unintended weaknesses that we're seeing.
Yeah, I have so much to say. have so much to say. So I guess I'll start on the civil liberty question. There's 4 different things I want to point your listeners to. One is the Earn It bill. So senators are attempting to destroy the use of encryption in private communications. The second one is the CDC is asking Facebook, Google, and tech giants to give them greater access to our smartphone location data. So the CDC can say, oh, look, I know the footsteps that Dante's taken all day, and so I know he's quarantining, or I know he's not. And then that can, and then there's 2 more. The Justice Department asked Congress to detain people indefinitely without trial during emergencies, similar to like habeas corpus in Civil War times, which I think is a really big infringement on our rights. And then finally, U.S. senators are, like, I suppose, using the crisis to pull off a corporate coup. And if you look at the last year, there's been more Fortune 500 CEOs stepping down than ever before in history, and it was during the greatest of times, as if, before they were stepping down before the market had taken its big hit. And I find that really suspicious. And if you look at history, like after 9/11, the Patriot Act was able to expand the mass surveillance programs that Edward Snowden and like WikiLeaks later exposed. And so I think in times of crisis, if you just ask yourself who can benefit from this, I think it can tell you a lot, because certain people and companies can take advantage of crises to help people, but simultaneously empower themselves.
Help themselves.
And so instead of judging it negatively or positively, I just wanted to just say that's the reality of what's at stake right now.
I'm actually going to go the other way. I'm going to, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I can point to a few things that have been interesting to me, where I think we're probably beginning to see a path towards less government interference than more, believe it or not. You recall the Hong Kong protests. You recall there was actually a lot of protests going around the world before this outbreak. And I thought that was quite significant, specifically in Hong Kong, where you've got, the citizens there, making a stand against the great authoritarian Chinese. So I think there might be a little bit of a bent blade of grass, if you will, where people are saying, listen, the Chinese government is just not being transparent enough. There needs to be some change. And I think, believe it or not, we might see some of these authoritarian governments, maybe in Russia, Iran, and China, actually becoming more transparent and free. Believe it or not, but I'm probably the lone man out there saying that. So look, it behooves me to let you respond to that, and then we'll have one more question and then wrap this up.
Could you clarify your question one more time for me? I apologize.
Well, what I'm saying, no worries. It was a bit convoluted. So what I was saying is, we saw pretty draconian measures by the Chinese government to curtail this virus, right? You see on TV them basically welding front doors shut to keep people in isolation or keep them at home. Also, we know that the Chinese government was withholding information to the world about the deadliness of this COVID virus. I think that is the impetus actually for populations, let's say the Chinese population, to say, sorry, Chinese government, you need to change. You need to be more forthcoming, more transparent, and more open, as opposed to less. And I know before you were saying these various bills that were being passed, etc., actually curtailed our freedom. I think this may actually have the opposite effect and allow us to be more free and to have more civil liberties. So not a question per se, but I'll let you respond.
I understand. It's a little more open-ended, and I think part of me thinks, yes, their ability to really clamp down, quarantine everyone, definitely help. But then part of me and this is kind of leaking into that conspiracy era that you wanted to stay out of, but
well, let's call it libertarian. Why don't we call it libertarian?
Libertarian. So that there's been millions upon millions of cell phones, and remember, like, China's a very technologically advanced country. People aren't, just not having their cell phone on them, right? And millions of them are just disappearing from the networks. And so do we even know that strategy was as effective? But what I will say is, I think what's going on with masks is very, very interesting, because at first the government said, masks don't do anything, don't buy masks, right? Meanwhile, they're trying to buy up as many masks as they can, and for good reason. They want to have masks for the doctors on the front lines, right? But I just think it's really funny that when you look at the charts, all the countries that have people that are largely wearing masks have 70-80% less transmission than countries in the Western world like the U.S., where people are still, they want to go jog with their dog with no mask on because, we're just so spoiled. We're so used to these freedoms that we love so much. So did it work? Yes, based on the numbers we were given, but look at the numbers of cell phones disappearing off their network. And then secondly, I'd say, let's start thinking about masks more, and how maybe it's just if everyone wore a mask, would that reduce transmission enough to allow us all to go back to work so that the economy can continue to move? Because if another month goes by, that's just going to be more inflation, more uncertainty. And I think that's why Trump is under so much pressure to make a decision that lets us all go back. But as you're choosing between $14 billion of lost GDP a day, and then you're choosing between lost lives, which are philosophically invaluable, and maybe the masks are a way to kind of like marry those two strategies. But I thought it was interesting that Dr. Fauci wasn't present at the press conference, and I think it's because I predict there to be a disagreement. I think that Dr. Fauci's position is keep everyone quarantined, and I think Trump wants people to start to go back to work because we're just losing a tremendous amount of momentum.
Let me stop you there for a few reasons. First of all, we're in a war, quite clearly, and I think Churchill coined the phrase "the fog of war," and that's what we're in, right? Misinformation, the fog of war. So we don't really know where we sit or where we stand right now. Only in retrospect we will. That's the first thing. Second of all, this is fundamentally an investment podcast. So let's stick to that. And let me ask you the final question, Dante. And thank you for your opinions and for your knowledge. I really do appreciate it. So this podcast listenership, predominantly wealth managers, financial advisors, family officers, some very large family officers, in fact, even some sovereign wealth fund managers. From time to time will listen to us, and pension fund managers. So real big allocator community. Putting on your, investment allocator goggles, if you will, how should our audience think about investing at this time or not investing? Where should they strategically be looking to place capital? Again, on a longer term basis.
What I think would be really interesting is to pull a lot of cash out of the stocks, pull a lot of cash out of a lot of investments, and wait. I think it's going to go down a lot more, and you may be able to swoop up businesses and stocks at 50% of where we see them now. I look at what the president did with the price of oil, and I actually think it was brilliant. Such ungodly low prices of oil that he just went and bought up and like he said, filled it up to the top so the whole country can be oil independent. If I was an investor, I'd be looking at telehealth because now doctors in California can treat a patient in New York, and that's one of the largest industries that I think will be in the highest focus.
How does one? I want to get, we've had segments on distressed debt and distressed investments, so we've got that covered. talking about telehealth and some of those other applications, blockchain, AI applications towards that. How do they, how do they figure out what the investment vehicle is? Is it a startup, somebody doing an MVP? What are you seeing as far as that's concerned?
I think it should be a diversified approach. I definitely think invest in a fund that's investing into the greatest synthetic biology startups, the greatest new telehealth startups. I would say buy up the real estate at record lows because everyone's over leveraged. You're going to be able to get like absurd price. I would take a very diversified approach. I'd buy up some Bitcoin. I would try to have the most diverse approach possible across countries, across industries, across stages, from seed all the way up to, if they have enough capital, acquire an entire business outright.
Okay. I know you speak with a lot of family offices, some large family offices. What are you hearing from them?
Well, some of the largest family offices that I'm in touch with, strictly on a blockchain basis, are actually feeling very optimistic right now. A lot of people are waiting at the sidelines, kind of playing musical chairs until the perfect moment, and a lot of them feel like, and how family offices like to strategize very discreetly, but I would say largely what I'm seeing is, in a way, optimism, and the sort of the musical chairs game of timing the market to buy the lowest dip possible.
Yeah. All right. Listen, I really appreciate it. In some respects, push the conversation in certain directions, but I appreciate you going along with that. So listen, Dante, really, really value your opinion. Thank you for coming on board. As I said before, you've got a catbird seat in a certain segment of the market that not everyone sees, and so your opinions are certainly of value. Let me hand it over to you for any final words, and then we can wrap it up.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me on, and just good to speak to you as a friend. I feel it's just like one of our normal conversations.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, listen, you take care of yourself. Again, you're in a what do they call it? Like a stay-at-home state, right? You're pretty much.
Oh yeah, I'm in Venice Beach, California.
Yeah.
I bet the whole city will be quarantined, but yeah, everything is shut down.
Right. Well, hopefully the marijuana dispensaries are still open. As you know,
They are.
We're large
investors
we're large investors in the cannabis space. So anyway, story for another day. Dante, thank you so much. Let me let you go, get on with your day. Let me wish you all the best. Please take care of yourself and your family, and hopefully next time we speak, we'll be in better and brighter times.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it'll be the best of times.
Yeah. Thanks, man.